So we've got some big changes actually coming to ESO. So when you see huge changes on thumbnails everywhere, they're actually true this time. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So I'm just gonna run through them really quickly just so you guys can know everything we know so far. First up, master crafting stations. So we've been talking about this for like a year and a half, it feels like, but you're finally gonna be able to have one station that will do all the item sets. You do need to just take your ones you've had and feed them to the master crafting station, and it will learn it, and then you'll be able to craft everything in one location. So that's coming. That's a huge change. Jewelry crafting is the next change up. This is pretty huge. If you watch the markets, you probably already know about this. So jewelry crafting is basically, grains are going away, and every one grain is now going to be worth one plating. And every one current plating is going to be worth 10 plating moving forward. So that's going to change, is going to happen automatically. If you do see something in your inventory that'll be like ancient plating or ancient grains, that's what they're going to change, what is currently grains and platings now. And then once the changeover happens, I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but you're going to get a 10 to 1. So grains are now going to be worth a plating is going to be worth 10 platings. So pretty huge there, pretty big change. And it's also going to take 8 plating to upgrade to a piece of gold jewelry. I don't really remember what it is now because I almost always use transmutes and use perfected jewelry, but that's the conversion. So if that's different than what it is right now, I honestly don't remember. Next up is a group finder. So this is not a dungeon queue, not like what we have now. It's not automatically going to put you in group. Basically what it looks like they did is that they took the guild finder, basically just imagine the guild finder, and they made that to where you can apply that to anything you want. There's a long list of things, so it can be trials, it can be dungeons, arenas, endless archive, the PvP, or a zone, and I think I'm missing one. So the idea here is basically you put in what you're looking for, what trial it's for, what dungeon it's for. You can put in a description. Yeah, and it was really funny. They're like Craglorn's going to be dead. I don't know if you guys have been in game, but Craglorn's been dead for a while. At least compared to what it has been. Trials are dead and you killed them. Man. So we'll see. I think this could be a useful tool. I think that a lot of people could use it. I think we'll probably use it for That Wasn't a Boss. You guys will have to let me know what you think about it. And I have notes here. Title, description, dungeon, trial, etc. People can apply to the group. They can either be auto-accepted, you can choose that, or you can manually pick who comes in. So yeah, that's a thing now, which can be helpful. You know, this will help when Craglorn being dead. Maybe there's a different instance and more people and what have you. And also people don't have to sit in Craglorn. You can look for group from other places. So I do think this could be helpful for actually finding groups. So those are 3 major, huge changes. And then I think after that, it's the endless archive. So that's going to be the rest of this video. Man, I'm just going to kind of go through the list here. So there's a lot of rewards for this. They're including a new deck and deck fragments for the Hermaeus Mora deck. There is going to be a currency that is called Archival Fortunes. That allows you to buy most of the things. There is also going to be a mount. I think that's achievement locked. They didn't actually show it that I saw, but they just talked about it briefly afterwards. There's going to be a furnishing vendor. There is going to be item sets. Item sets kind of similar to what you can do with like Spell Power Cure, where like in the archive, you can go and like purchase set pieces if you know, they drop there, but you can also purchase them. So it's a little bit easier to farm them, I guess. The sets are all over the place. Some of them are tank sets, some of them are healer sets, and there's one currently for each class. Some of them could be useful in PvP, some of them, maybe 1 or 2 could be useful in PvE. They're all over the place. Some of them look decent, some of them look good, some of them look like trash. So it's kind of all over the place. I might take some time tomorrow and kind of talk about those, but I'm not going to go any more detail right now. Yeah, just really interesting. Again, some of them are garbage. The Necro tank set is garbage. Some of the other sets are fine. Some of them even look really good or overpowered. So we'll just have to see what happens. As far as the Endless Archive, people were confused about this, and the reason is because it's confusing. So there's 60 plus bosses that they basically repurposed, and I assume retuned. I think some of the mechanics work a little bit different because they're geared for the 2-person content, 1 or 2-person content. Some of these bosses are from everywhere from public dungeons to overland to trials to whatever. So they're grabbed from kind of everywhere. It's funny because there was some confusion because some of the same figures were used in different things, so it's a little bit of a hodgepodge as far as what is in there, but at least 60 plus. So, the idea is it's an endless PvE area. There are 3 stages. Once you go through 3 stages, then you fight a boss, and that's a cycle. And then once you go through 5 cycles, then you fight the end boss of that area. I forget what that one's called. And then that's like 1 round. And then they were talking about going up to like 7 or 9 rounds. Things get kind of difficult. Pretty interesting, a little bit confusing. At the end of each one of the stages, you can pick this buff, and you'll have 1 or 2 buffs. And then later on, you can unlock with the currency to get there. You can unlock buffs for the Endless Archive. So that's kind of interesting and a little bit odd. Those are account wide, so that is nice. And one of the buffs you can unlock is like instead of getting to pick between 2 buffs, you can pick between 3, and you only get 1. One's utility, one is offensive, and the other one's defensive. So probably be one of the first things you probably want to unlock so that you have all of the options available to you. And then those are randomized. There's a whole bunch of them. The way it's going to work is that you're going to have so many lives. They're calling them threads of fate. The like general theme of this is that there's a lot of things that are named really weird names, and so it's very confusing. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to make it simpler or more clear. I'm sure as time goes on, we'll learn and kind of figure it out. But there's threads of fate, which are lives. So if everybody in your party dies, that's 1 life. You have a limited number of lives, and then you're done. You can't continue on, and you have to restart in a new instance. So that's kind of how it works. If one person in your group dies, the other person can res them, and you don't actually lose a life. So, or a thread of fate. So that's kind of how that part works. There is no vet, and there is no normal. It's all the same difficulty, and then it ramps up. I have strong feelings about this because the difference between, they also said that they designed it to be more accessible. So for healers and for tanks, supposedly, I think it's really for people that don't know how to play very well and, can't do very good DPS. A tank normally does like 6k DPS in like a raid setup. And then a DPS in a raid setup can do up to 120k. So you're looking at 20 times the damage. So just thinking about that, if you're someone who, watches my videos and hopefully can, has learned a bit, knows how to parse 60 to 80K, I think, you're going to be bored at first. And then I don't know how long it's going to take to ramp up. But I have concerns about that wasting people's time, wasting my time, honestly. But we'll just have to see how it is. Yeah. It's really, kind of crazy to say this piece of content is for both of these groups of people when one of them is doing literally 20 times the damage that the other group is doing. A little bit more, actually, but more like 22 to 24, but whatever. After that, every once in a while, there are portals to the unknown. These are like side missions or side bosses. They appear not to be at all like a traditional, they're games, they're mini games, basically. So it's like wandering around and finding the wisp while staying hidden, and it's a few other things. These are supposed to ramp up as well. The early ones look kind of like brain dead, but they only took a couple of seconds, or 30 seconds or a minute, so not that big of a deal. I guess those ramp up though. And then I guess the last couple of things here is that the leaderboards, they are going to have leaderboards, but they're not going to be based on being timed. It's only how far you get in a dungeon. They said some stuff about this, that it was for like, diversity of builds, I think is what they used. What they mean is that there's a lot of, there's a lot of people that they support who do really poor builds, and that they talk to and do interviews with and stuff like that. And I guess they're just trying to like embrace that because those people always speak positively of the game. They never criticize or anything. So I guess they're just kind of leaning into that idea. Gina at the end kind of said, let the cat out of the bag a little bit, where she said, this is about accessibility and making things easy. The thing is that this is all accessible, like scoreboards and leaderboards isn't about accessibility, right? Like that doesn't really make sense. Accessibility is being able to go in and have fun and do the content, which is what the ease, starting out really easy, and then also not having 2 different tiers. I assume that, I don't know. I assume some of that is just from a game design perspective, but the reasoning, what they're saying, it doesn't make any sense. So I assume this is, again, just to make people not feel bad because they can't get on the leaderboard. So I guess if you go in on a tank and you want to spend 20 hours in there, you can DPS things down. Sure. I mean, whatever. I don't really care about leaderboards and doing that kind of stuff. I never really do that anyways. So, but yeah, I don't know. You guys who do this stuff or who want to do it, but feel like the time part of it was unfair or something, or wasn't accessible, let me know down in the comments. Yeah, I'm really confused about that, to be totally honest with you. And then the last thing is that they said that they're going to add more sets, basically. They didn't quite promise, but they all but promised. Basically, they did one set for each class, and it applies to a particular skill line. And so they did 7, and then obviously there's room for 14 more, one for each skill line, 7 classes, 3 skill lines apiece, 21 total. They're doing 7 now, these 14 left. And yeah, that is it. I think, my takeaway from all this stuff is, I think doing the group finder like the guild finder was a good workaround. Obviously, they can't get the dungeon finder to work, so there's no way they were ever going to be able to get like a trial finder to work. Certainly not one for multiple things. So, I like what they did. I think it's fine. If you can't do that, they did what they could do. I'm pretty happy with that. I think it could be very useful for a lot of people and help people find groups, and I don't know. So I think that's not a bad thing at all. I think the jewelry crafting changes are great. It's way too expensive for people, like me. It being able to get gold gear from perfected jewelry drops and dungeons and trials, in trials, is, that's what I do. So it's great that it's more accessible to the average player now. I really like that. The endless archive is like a big question mark. Some numbers that they said here, let me give you some numbers. Yeah, so just some numbers according to Mike Finnegan. So he's he's in charge of the whole dungeon team. 35 to 40 minutes for one person to get through one of like the largest groups of rounds. There's a boss at the end, and it's a boss that you fight each time, but they gain more abilities each time, which I think are randomized. So 40 minutes, just call it that. So if you have 2 people, you're looking at about 20 minutes to get through the first round. Yeah, I don't know. They're talking about doing 7 or way more rounds than that. So that's several hours. I guess you could play this for like 4 or 5 hours. If you leave the instance, though, this is not like a normal arena, so you will lose all of your time. So you will lose all your progression. You have to start over. You can start off with just going in solo or solo with a companion and then invite somebody later. You cannot have companions in there with another person, so it's 2 people total, which is kind of what you would expect. You can't use the armory. I know the console people, that's really frustrating because especially if you're like pushing, but I guess there's no time limit. The way it kind of looked like it worked is there's a bunch of trash. There might be a few mini bosses or like elite trash that come in at various points kind of randomly, and those drop better loot. And then eventually you get to like a boss at the end of each like 3 cycles or something. Again, the rounds are very confusing, that there's like rounds within rounds within rounds. There's 3 layers of it, and then eventually you get to the last boss. So 20 minutes for a duo to get through the first one, and then you would presume that it would take longer after that. So I guess this is, instead of being timed, it's like, how much time do you want to spend doing this? It feels like a really big time sink and a time waste to me, but we'll have to see. It could be very fun. There were some interesting mechanics that I hadn't seen. It could be that they're being reused from a dungeon, and I just don't run that many, so I could have forgotten that, oh yeah, I've seen this before. But some of them may be original. I'm not entirely sure on that. We'll have to see, because we only saw a very brief bit of it. They did mention that, like, if you're faster for a couple of really good players, a duo, that you can get through the first round in about 10 to 15 minutes. Again, this seems like it could quickly, if you want to get up to the higher rounds, it could take hours, and you have like a 5-minute-ish timer where you can be AFK. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'll do this. I don't think I'm going to be grinding out and spending hours and hours in there. That's just not something that's super interesting to me. But maybe you guys let me know down in the comments below what you think. So that's it for today. I think that's all the changes I've got. So some pretty big and some pretty interesting changes. I think there's some really great things in here. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more the same. I guess we'll see. It'll be out on Monday. I'll definitely go give it a try and look for a video out then. We'll catch you in the next one.